So good evening. On behalf of Interim Director Sarah Wiggins and the Newark Public Library's Board of Trustees, welcome. I'm Tom Ankner, head of the Charles F. Cummings New Jersey Information Center here at the library. We are delighted to once again be hosting and co-sponsoring this Newark History Society program. Tonight's presentation is Pioneering Women Lawyers of Newark. We ask that everyone hold your questions until the end. We will have a microphone for those here in person to ask questions. Those of you on Zoom can type your questions in the chat box or Q&A box. Our speakers will get to as many as possible after their talk. The History Society is generously providing the food for tonight's event. Please help yourselves if you have not already. Bathrooms are out past the reference desk on the right side of the gallery. If you have some time while you are here, we hope you will take a look at a few of the exhibits on display. As part of the Newark Public Library's commemoration of the nation's 250th anniversary, we are hosting two traveling exhibits. Oh Freedom, which is over here on my right, which is along the wall here, was curated by the New Jersey State Parks and Historic Sites. It focuses on the lives of Black New Jerseyans during the American Revolution. On the third floor is Revolutionary Lives from the New Jersey Historical Commission. That exhibit focuses on the lives of New Jerseyans, both prominent and not, during the Revolution. Reverend Alexander McWhorter of First Presbyterian Church is among those mentioned in the exhibit. And we hope some of you are able to join us on Thursday for another in our Revolutionary Talks series. Catherine Gulick Tours of the State Archives will be speaking in Centennial Hall on Thursday evening. Using primary sources from the State Archives, she will explore the lives of New Jerseyans during the Revolution, paying special attention to people from Essex County. That will be Thursday in Centennial Hall at 6 p.m. As with all Newark History Society programs, the Newark Public Library is a co-sponsor tonight with the New Jersey Performing Arts Center. We thank NJPAC for providing the Zoom presentation for these events. Now, please welcome Daniela Fonseca from NJPAC.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening, everyone. My name is Daniela Fonseca, as Tom has said. I'm a producer with the Community Engagement Department at New Jersey Performing Arts Center. And I'm super excited to learn more about this generation of Newark remarkable women lawyers. It's always a pleasure for me to be here. I'm always learning about Newark. This is a great series. And I would like to invite you to come to some of our NJPAC events. So April 18th at 7:30, we have Coltrane 100, where we're going to be celebrating 100 years since the birth of jazz icon John Coltrane. We have a great lineup for that show. We're going to have Joe Lovano, Melissa Aldana, Nduzu Makatini, John Patuccini, and Jeff Watt. So I hope to see you guys there. And also on Monday, April 20th, we have a virtual program with our Standing Solidarity series. And we're going to be talking about caring for the caregivers on the National Caregivers Month. So I hope to see you guys there or join us virtually. Thank you. And now, Tim.
Thanks, Daniela. I'm Tim Christ, president of the Newark History Society. I think I know most of you. And I think you know that a group of us started the Newark History Society some 25 years ago. And Steve, I think you were program 2 or 3 or 4, 2 on the Newark teacher strike way back in 2002. We've put on more than 110 public programs since then, all free and open to the public, and as well as sponsoring the Newark Archives Project, all part of trying to draw more attention to Newark's history and to encourage new research. If any of you are not members of the Newark History Society or not on our mailing list, please grab one of these flyers from the table at the back and we'll be happy to add you. I'm delighted tonight that our two speakers, George Robb and Robb Steinbaum, are going to be talking on the topic of pioneering women lawyers of Newark. George will go first. George is the man you want to talk to if you have any interest in Newark from about the progressive era through Prohibition. George, I think this is the 7th or 8th program that you've been part of here on the progressive era, on Prohibition, on women's suffrage, on Black business women of Newark, a number of topics. And World War I, of course, how can I forget? You're working on a book about Newark and World War I. George is a recently retired professor of history at William Paterson University and has been very active in the Newark History Society, as I say. The Robb Steinbaum will go second after George kind of provides a general background and discusses, perhaps briefly, a number of women lawyers. Robb is going to take a deeper dive into the career of Elizabeth Blume Silverstein. Robb also has been involved with the Newark History Society from the beginning. And Robb, I went back, it was 15 years ago that you organized and moderated our program on Newark's Chinatown, which I think we did just in time in order to involve some of the Chinese Newarkers while they could still share their memories. Robb has had a long and distinguished career, an assistant U.S. attorney here in Newark, the publisher of the New Jersey Law Journal for 2.5 decades, and for the last 10 years or so, an assistant dean for advancement at Rutgers Law School. So we have a good lineup. George, why don't you get us started?
So America's first. Do I need this, or am I supposed to use this?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I don't think I need it, but America's first generation of women lawyers emerged in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. These pioneering Porsches, as they were invariably dubbed, had to overcome significant institutional and cultural barriers in order to practice law. Unlike teaching or medicine, which could be justified as compatible with women's supposed nurturing qualities, the law was seen as a profession that demanded cold objectivity, cunning, combativeness, and the ability to deal with the sordid world. Women lawyers would have to enter boisterous courtrooms where criminals and people of ill repute were tried for their deception, greed, and violence. The law thus seemed incompatible with the Victorian conception of women as passive, delicate, and pure. The legal profession was especially difficult to integrate because sexual discrimination was rooted in the legal system itself. Not fully citizens, American women could not vote or hold public office. For much of the 19th century, married women were legally children, unable to own property, sign contracts, or even write their own wills. Before I discuss the erosion of those barriers, let me quickly sketch how one became a lawyer in 19th century America. As you know, today, a person must graduate high school, obtain a bachelor's degree, graduate from law school, 3 years in law school, and pass a state bar exam in order to practice law. In the 19th century, no college degrees or even a high school diploma were necessary. Very few law schools even existed until the late 1800s. New Jersey did not get its first permanent law school until 1908. Most people became lawyers by apprenticing with practicing lawyers.
Yo.
Am I supposed to be pressing this, pointing it? Yeah, I am. Oh, there we go. All right, just not hard enough. So this could be like Scrooge and Bob Cratchit, but it gives you a sort of a sense of what a 19th century law office might look like. A young man would learn the ropes by working in a law office. He would copy briefs, read law books, and accompany lawyers to court where he watched them in action. Once the apprentice felt he had mastered the essentials, he would be examined by a judge or lawyer who had been licensed by the state to act as an examiner. These exams were oral, not written, and might be very informal. Not until the 1890s did most states adopt written, more rigorous bar exams. In Illinois, for example, Abraham Lincoln was one of the official examiners, and he was notoriously easy And one young man later wrote that, oh, he went to Lincoln's hotel room to like set up the exam, and Lincoln was getting dressed to go out. And he asked him like, oh, how many books have you read? And oh, that's impressive. What do you think a contract is? And he was just sort of chatting to him. And at the end, Lincoln said, oh, that'll do. And the guy said, oh, he had passed the exam without even realizing he was being examined. So I mean, those were the days, right? The earliest women lawyers also apprenticed in law offices, often with relatives. Arabella Mansfield, for example, worked in her brother's law firm in Iowa. In 1869, she passed the judicial exam and was admitted to the Iowa State Bar, thus becoming America's first woman lawyer. She was lucky as she found willing examiners and the Iowa courts accepted her. Other states were more resistant. In Illinois, Myra Bradwell had apprenticed at her husband's law office. She passed an exam administered by an Illinois judge, but the Illinois Supreme Court refused to grant her a law license on the grounds of sex. In his opinion, the Illinois Chief Justice asserted that, quote, God designed the sexes to occupy different spheres of action. Myra Bradwell appealed to the United States Supreme Court, which heard her case in 1873. In Bradwell versus Illinois, the justices ruled against Myra Bradwell 8-1, affirming states' rights to exclude women from practicing law. One of the justices buttressed his opinion that women could not practice law by arguing that this was because they occupied a separate sphere from men. This is a kind of, it's a little fuzzy, I'm sorry. This is a very common kind of idea or doctrine, so-called in the 19th century, the idea that God or nature or both had created man and woman to be fundamentally different and to occupy separate spheres in life, and woman's sphere was the home, and man's was everything else. So this is a cartoon from the early 20th century showing how women are pushing against that. So it says, you know, women's sphere is, and it says the home, and she's crossed out the home and written and said like wherever she succeeds or something like that, wherever she thrives. So these are the, you know, so judges felt no reluctance to like quote the Bible to women about why they can do this or they couldn't do that. So when state courts refused to accept women lawyers, the only recourse was through state legislatures enacting laws that permitted women to practice law in those states. Between 1869 and 1899, that is the last 30 years of the 19th century, 35 states and territories passed laws allowing women to be lawyers. New Jersey was 30 of 35, only allowing women to practice law in 1895. So New Jersey was not exactly at the front of the line. Though in 1900, there were still around a dozen states, mostly in the South, that held out against women lawyers. But by the 1920s, all states and territories allowed women to practice law. Women's entry into the legal profession was altered by the dramatic expansion of law schools in the late 19th century, during which time they eclipsed apprenticeship as the principal path to becoming a lawyer. This is an image from a law school class. You notice they're all men from the mid 1800s or the later 1800s. I think it's Notre Dame Law School. It's not a New Jersey law school. New Jersey didn't have any law schools. Princeton tried to establish a law school in 1847. It lasted for about 5 years and graduated seven students, all men, before it just went belly up. So New Jersey wasn't going to get a law school again until 1908. From 1870 to 1890, the number of American law schools doubled from 31 to 61. From 1890 to 1910, they doubled again to 124. The oldest law schools and the most elite East Coast law schools like Harvard, Yale, and Columbia refused to admit women. The newer law schools established in the Midwest and the West after the Civil War were coeducational from the beginning. Ada Kepley was the first woman to graduate from a US law school. That was from Northwestern in 1870. World War I accelerated sexual integration as large numbers of college-age men entered the military, thus causing enrollments to decline, so schools were more willing to accept women. Yale Law School finally admitted women in 1918. By 1920, women were admitted to 102 of America's 142 law schools, so about 2/3 of them. Harvard Law held out until 1950. From 1890 to 1920, the number of women lawyers in America octupled. That's increased by a factor of 8 from 209 women lawyers in 1890 to 1,700 in 1920. But this still only constituted 1% of all American lawyers. So men were still 99% of lawyers in 1920. Most of these pioneering women lawyers were white, middle class, and Protestant. This is a convention of women lawyers from around 1900. I love it. One of them has her baby. You can imagine a convention of male lawyers from 1900 where somebody brought a baby with them. I don't think that would have happened. Nonetheless, some women from immigrant backgrounds and a few Black women were beginning to enter the profession. For example, in 1872, Charlotte Ray graduated from Howard University Law School and became the nation's first Black woman lawyer. She was an extreme outlier. New Jersey did not have a Black woman lawyer until 1949. The earliest women lawyers often struggled with the question of how to be a lawyer and a lady. Simply pleading in court could be seen as unladylike. Not surprisingly, most women lawyers chose office practice over court practice. Nonetheless, many women lawyers were advocates for women's rights and women's suffrage. They saw themselves as defending women against the sexist legal system. The first women lawyers often struggled to establish practices and find clients. Corporate law firms seldom hired women. Women also lacked business contacts or membership in fraternal organizations that could generate clients. The most fortunate women lawyers were those who had fathers, brothers, or husbands who were lawyers willing to give them work. Most pioneering women lawyers were in private practice by themselves or with one other person, usually another woman. Much of their business was probate or real estate work. Women also made up a significant percentage of women lawyers' clients. The first women lawyers especially struggled to balance career and family life. In 1920, only 30% of women lawyers were married, far below the national average for American women. A 1920 survey of women lawyers asked them why some women stopped practicing law. The biggest reason given was marriage. Let me shift now to some brief profiles of some of Newark's first women lawyers. Mary Philbrook was New Jersey's first woman lawyer. She passed the bar in 1895. I mean, she was she practiced law in Newark for decades. She grew up in Jersey City. Her father had a successful law practice in New York City. Philbrook is an example, I'd say a late example, of a lawyer qualifying through apprenticeship. She never attended college, let alone law school. She didn't even graduate from high school. She attended high school for several years. As a teen, she apprenticed at 2 law offices in Hoboken. In New Jersey, anyone who had apprenticed with a lawyer could apply to take the state bar exam. In 1894, Philbrook's application was refused on the grounds of her sex. She petitioned the New Jersey Supreme Court, which refused to interfere. So her only redress was a legislative act, which we saw, were taking place, which she was able to secure on March 20th, 1895, with assistance of women's clubs who lobbied the state assembly. On June 6th, 1895, 22-year-old Mary Philbrook passed the bar exam with honors. She interned for a couple of years with a law firm in Jersey City, but in 1898, she opened a law practice in Newark with an office at 828 Broad Street, which is the building just south of Old First Presbyterian Church, right next to the church where the trolley is in front of. That same year, she founded the New Jersey Legal Aid Society, dedicated to providing free legal assistance to those unable to afford a lawyer. Clients for legal aid included many women. Philbrook was active in the women's suffrage movement, supporting the nation's most militant suffrage organization, the National Woman's Party, led by fellow New Jerseyan Alice Paul. Throughout her career as a lawyer, Philbrook advocated for the rights of women and children. She worked with the Essex County Probation Office, dealing primarily with juvenile cases, and she was instrumental in establishing a juvenile court system, or separate juvenile court system, in 1904. In 1906, Philbrook worked with the Essex County Sheriff on a campaign to eliminate prostitution in Newark. That same year, she became the first New Jersey woman appointed to practice before the U.S. Supreme Court. In 1911, Mary Philbrook instituted a novel and much publicized court case designed to restore New Jersey women's rights to vote. Harriet Carpenter, you see there, pictured next to Philbrook, Harriet Carpenter was a Newark school teacher. And on October 31st, 1911, she attempted to register to vote, and she was refused on the grounds of her sex. So, and she was put up to this by Philbrook, right? It's one of those put up cases like Plessy versus Ferguson or the Scopes trial, where you got them to purposely defy the law in order to give you grounds to challenge the law. So in her legal case, Carpenter versus Cornish, and Cornish was the registrar of voters who refused to let Carpenter join the voting list. Philbrook argued that New Jersey women still had the right to vote, which had been granted them in the state's 1776 Constitution. I'm sure many of you know New Jersey was the only of the 13 states which granted women the right to vote. That was later taken back. And what she argued is that that before the New Jersey Supreme Court, that the 1807 New Jersey law that deprived the state's women of the franchise was constitutionally invalid. That law also deprived Black men in New Jersey of the right to vote, which they had been granted, free Black men in 1776. The 1807 law said only white men could vote. The court ruled against Philbrook and Carpenter, but the case attracted the attention of legal experts across the country, and it was written up quite a lot. So it got Mary Philbrook a lot of attention, a lot of respect. That this woman in her 30s was able to come up with this fairly ingenious legal argument. After the 19th Amendment granted the vote to all American women, Philbrook worked with Alice Paul for the adoption of an Equal Rights Amendment to outlaw all sexual discrimination. So waiting for that one. During World War I, Philbrook worked for the legal department of the American Red Cross in France. After the war, she took part in meetings at the League of Nations in Geneva, pushing for a league resolution on equal rights for women. At the New Jersey Constitutional Convention in 1947, a 75-year-old Philbrook organized a coalition of women's groups to successfully lobby for gender-neutral language in the new state constitution. Person was used instead of man, he, or him. I mean, in many ways, she was very much ahead of her time. Mary Philbrook had a long and distinguished career, and because of her political activism, her life is well documented. Other pioneering women lawyers from Newark often led more prosaic and quieter professional lives, and therefore we don't know as much about them. Such as Laura Mayo Wilson. She was born and raised in Newark, the daughter of a leather worker. She lived on Elm Street and later Garside Street. In 1910, she became the first woman to graduate from the New Jersey Law School, now Rutgers Law School. This was located on East Park Street, the building no longer standing. The school had only been founded in 1908, and it was New Jersey's first law school, or first permanent law school. From the very beginning, it admitted women. Wilson passed the bar exam in 1913. She was 42 years old. Previously, she had worked as a stenographer. Why she decided to pursue a legal career at this stage of her life, I don't know. We just don't know that much about her. Wilson initially worked as a lawyer for the Legal Aid Society in Newark, which, as you recall, was founded by Mary Philbrook. She was also a consulting attorney for the New Jersey Federation of Women's Clubs. Wilson had an office at 763 Broad Street, where she worked as a private practice lawyer. This is about all we know about her, and she lived for another 50 years after she became a lawyer. So it's possible that more information can be turned up, but I'm not hopeful at this late date. Paula Laddie is better documented. She was born in Germany. Her family moved to America when she was 9. They initially lived in Kearney, but later moved to Newark, living at 493 Summer Avenue, which you see depicted here. That house is still standing. Her father was an accountant, and her mother, Clara Laddie, was a prominent suffragist who served as president of the New Jersey Women's Suffrage Association. So her mother was a very well-known figure in the state. Paula Laddie graduated from New York University in 1906, and she studied at the New York School of Philanthropy. She worked for the Bureau of Associated Charities in Newark, and later, like Mary Philbrook, as a probation officer for Essex County, specializing in juvenile cases. This is all before she became a lawyer. Laddie entered the New Jersey Law School, graduating in 1911 at age 32. She passed the bar in 1913 and opened a law office in the Union Building. at 11 Clinton Street. That building is still standing. She had her office there on the 7th floor for more than 40 years. Her brother, prominent Newark lawyer John V. Laddie, also had his offices in the Union Building on the 5th floor. In 1914, Laddie became the director of the Legal Aid Society, an organization created by Mary Philbrook in 1898. In September 1915, the Newark Sunday Call published a lengthy interview with Laddie about her work with legal aid. She explained that about 60% of their cases were employment related, such as suing workers for unpaid wages. Another 20% were domestic cases, such as wives suing husbands for child support. Clients had to pay a dime if legal aid took their cases, and they had to pay 10% of any judgment that might be awarded. And it's interesting, they point out that in 1 year, legal aid handled 1,500 cases. They only had 2 full-time lawyers, including Laddie, and that there were 2 law students from the Newark Law School that I probably were working as unpaid interns. And then there was like sort of secretarial support. So they were very busy. Through her work in the suffrage movement, Laddie met Beatrice Henry, a widow who was the director of personnel at Bamberger's department store. I'm sorry, this is a really bad picture. It's a newspaper copy from microfilm, but Laddie is standing in the back wearing the white blouse and the black scarf. Laddie and Henry served together on the planning committee for the celebration of Newark's 250th anniversary in 1916. At Laddie's urging, Henry entered law school and was admitted to the bar in 1924 at age 46. Henry joined Laddie's law practice and they worked together for decades. In 1934, Laddie moved into Henry's house at 444 Summer Avenue. That house is still standing. The women lived together until Beatrice Henry's death 20 years later. In 1939, they moved to Montclair, living at 17 Montclair Avenue. That house is also standing. In 1941, they opened a law office in Montclair at 20 Church Street, while still maintaining their Newark office at the Union Building. That building on 20 Church Street is still standing also. It's now today it's a cannabis dispensary. Right. The times they are changing. In 1944, the women moved to Vermont, where they purchased and operated a local newspaper. Henry retired from legal practice, but Laddie kept working. On Henry's death in 1954, she returned to Newark. So these 2 women lawyers worked and lived together for 30 years. Were they romantic partners as well as business partners? It's impossible to know, but I think it likely. The 4 women I have just profiled were all white middle-class Protestants, representative of Newark's traditional elite. The last 2 legal pioneers I'll briefly discuss, Jennie Ricker and Jennie Precker, were Jewish and the daughters of immigrants. Jennie Ricker, and thanks to Beth Cohen for finding this photograph on a genealogy site. I've known about her and her remarkable family for a long time. Jennie was the 3rd of 8 children of Bernard and Minnie Chob Ricker, Russian Jewish immigrants, later shortened their name to Ricker. They lived on Bruce Street in central Newark above Bernard's tailor shop. Although Jennie died young and had a very brief career as a lawyer, we know a lot about her as a person and personality because a cache of hundreds of Ricker family letters at the New Jersey Historical Society. Most of these letters were written in 1917, 1918 to and from Jack Ricker, Jennie's older brother, while he was stationed in France during World War I. Jennie was one of her brother's most frequent correspondents, and her letters document her nascent legal career. As a law student, Jennie Ricker worked for Paula Laddie at the Legal Aid Society. She graduated from the Newark Law School and passed the bar in 1917 at age 23, just as America entered the war. With so many men joining the Army, Jennie saw an opportunity for opening her own law office. In September 1917, she was able to rent 3 rooms cheaply, $20 a month, in the Globe building at 800 Broad Street. It's not the National Bank building, which is now Indigo, but it's the much shorter and older Victorian office building to the north of it. that tall building would have been like the state-of-the-art office building in Newark in 1917. And she would not have been able to afford office space in there. The rooms that she rented had been the office of an architect who had joined the army. He also sold Jennie his office furniture for $45, but before she bought it, she went around and priced used furniture shops in Newark to make sure she was getting a bargain, and found she wasn't able to buy that furniture for less than $118 at shops in Newark. So she decided that 45 was a good bargain. She also planned to sublet one of the rooms to make a little extra money. Precker began her law practice with a capital of $160. 30 she had saved herself, 30 she borrowed from her father, and 100 from her brother Jack. I mean, this is really remarkable. I mean, to find this level of detail about how a young woman lawyer, this early period, was setting up her law practice and how much it cost and how she did it, and what she thought about it. I mean, we just don't have that kind of information. So this is really very remarkable kind of material. In December 1917, Jennie wrote to Jack that she was getting a lot of business helping young men fill out their draft board questionnaires and writing appeals for exemptions. Judge Martin appointed Jennie to serve on the legal advisory board of the 3rd Ward Draft Board. They met at the Belmont Avenue School every evening between 7 and 10 p.m. The 3rd Ward, or the Hill, just west of High Street, was the center of Newark's Jewish community. By the 1930s, it was the center of the African-American community, but at this point, it was still really a very Jewish neighborhood, even a Jewish ghetto, some might call it. Many of the potential draftees that Jennie assisted were recent immigrants, not yet citizens, and imperfect English speakers. Some of her clients were men arrested for failing to appear before the draft board, often because their summons were sent to the wrong address. She took out writs of habeas corpus to get them out of jail. Precker was also sensitive about how the law disadvantaged women. In January 1918, she wrote Jack that their sister Anna was marrying a recent immigrant, Irving Baumgarten, who was still a German citizen and therefore an enemy alien. As a woman, Anna would take her husband's nationality. So just a quote from the letter. There now, we'll have a sister enemy alien in our family, right? Punk laws, what do you say? Why should a person born here become an alien simply because she's married? Rotten laws. In 1918, Jennie's business was sluggish, and she confessed to Jack, unless things change mighty quick, I'm going to look for a government job. By 1920, she had given up her office space, but was still listed in the city directory as a lawyer. In 1920, she married Edward Siegel, a plumber from East Orange. In 1921, she gave birth to a son. She then disappears from the public record. Marriage and motherhood most likely ended her legal career, and she died shortly afterwards, probably in 1926, but that's not even for sure. I mean, she died somewhere around then, but it's not sure exactly when. The last legal pioneer I'll profile is Jennie Precker. She was the 3rd of 4 children of Joseph and Regina Precker, Austrian Jewish immigrants. Her father was a hat maker, and the family lived on South 6th Street, not far from West Side Park. Precker graduated from Newark Normal School in 1917, a teacher's training college. That building is still there, and taught school for a few years, which is a more traditional middle-class occupation for women, being a school teacher. So she taught school for a few years before enrolling in the New Jersey Law School. She graduated with honors in 1922 and passed the bar exam the same year at age 30. She joined her brother's law firm, Precker & Precker, whose office was in the Chamber of Commerce building. That building is still there, and you see her brothers, Abram and Michael Precker. But they notice they didn't call it Precker, Precker & Precker when she joined it. She was counsel for the New Jersey Women's Republican Club. Women had just gained a vote, and she was a lawyer for the Salvation Army in Newark. Precker is best remembered today as the founder and president of the Susan B. Anthony Building and Loan Association, a financial institution dedicated to helping local women buy their own homes. Precker was sensitive to women's legal and economic disadvantages, especially their lack of access to credit. Her building and loan was named in honor of pioneering suffragist Susan B. Anthony and was managed entirely by women. There were 13 women sat on the board of directors. Its offices were at 1186 Raymond Boulevard. That building is still standing. It's not one of the 2 prominent towers, but it's that lower building sort of nestled between them, the lower white building, which you can sort of still see today at the south end of Military Park. The Precker's building and loan was especially successful and long-lived. You see, it lasted for more than 50 years. It weathered the Great Depression when many banks failed because Precker established cash reserves much higher than required by New Jersey law. The Carteret Savings and Loan Association in Newark eventually acquired the Susan B. Anthony in 1978. Jennie Precker was very active in civic affairs, practicing law into her 80s. She was also a keen supporter of the Equal Rights Amendment. Now, of the 6 pioneering women lawyers I have briefly profiled, 4 were born in the 1870s, 2 in the 1890s. 4 of the 6 were active in the women's rights movement. The other 2 might have been, I just haven't been able to prove that one way or another. 4 of the 6 worked for legal aid, which I think is interesting. 5 of the 6 were unmarried. And of course, the one who got married, Jennie Precker, it seemed like marriage pretty much put the end to her legal career. As a quick addendum, I was curious to know who was the first Black woman lawyer, the first Latina lawyer from Newark. It's not from such an early period. Marie Bernadine Johnson was Newark's first Black woman lawyer. She grew up on the north side at 548 North 7th Street, which is the house to the right. The house to the left is where I live. So and doing the research for this, I was quite excited. It's like, oh my God, I live right next door to this pioneer, or where this pioneer was born and grew up. She graduated from West Side High School. She attended the New Jersey Law School, and she passed the bar in 1949. I mean, she wasn't just the first Black woman lawyer in Newark. She was the first Black woman lawyer in New Jersey. Another Black woman, Wilson, I'm sorry. She's from Montclair. She also passed the bar around the same time. I'm not talking about her because she's not a Newarker. Johnson began her legal career with her father, Jacob B. Johnson, himself a pioneering Black lawyer in New Jersey. She was active in the Urban League and was legal counsel for the New Jersey State Federation of Colored Women's Clubs. In 1955, Marie Wilson was appointed to the U.S. Senate Subcommittee on Juvenile Delinquency. At the time, she was the only Black woman lawyer practicing on Capitol Hill. I have been unable to discover the first Latina lawyer from Newark. The first Latina lawyers from New Jersey were Marianne Espinosa, a Puerto Rican, and Zulema Farber, a Cuban American, both 1974 graduates of Rutgers Law School. They both had very distinguished careers, but neither was a Newarker. So obviously there is much room for further research about women lawyers from Newark, and my presentation has been a very basic introduction. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to speak to you tonight about Elizabeth Blume Silverstein. For most of the talk, it's not my research, unlike George. This is the research of Linda Forgosh, who was the executive director of the Jewish Historical Society of New Jersey. And she gave this talk, that's the program, in 2019 at Douglas College for the New Jersey Historical Commission. And I was fortunate to be there with the dean of the law school and also with her son, Nathan Silverstein. At that program, Tim Christ also presented. He presented on Beatrice Windsor, who I think many of you know was a leader of both the Newark Public Library and of the museum. So the talk I'm giving is an edited version of what Linda did. but I'll ad-lib some things. Like before I start, I want to comment on something George said. The US Supreme Court decision denying women the right or upholding the denial in Illinois or Iowa of the right to vote was authored by a Newark justice. It was authored by Justice Bradley. And because of his outrageous statement in that case, as well as his very truncated view of the 14th Amendment that is in the civil rights cases, former Dean Ron Chen led a committee to take away his name from Bradley Hall on Dr. Martin Luther King Avenue. And the chancellor and the Rutgers Board of Governors agreed to that. So the building now just has an address. It's no longer Bradley Hall. Okay. Okay, let's go. Okay, so, okay, there she is. Okay. And now why am I giving this talk? Okay. Linda Forgash didn't feel up to coming tonight to do this, and she asked that I do it. Why me? Because for the past 11 years that I've been at Rutgers Law School doing development work, I've worked with her son, Nathan Silverstein. And that has resulted in a sizable gift to the law school and the naming of the plaza in front of the law school, which was New Street, as Elizabeth Blume Silverstein Plaza. And I'll show you a picture of it at the end. Also, most recently, at the end of December, Nathan Silverstein gave the family house at 62 Osborne Terrace to Clinton Hill Community Action. And yeah, there. It's Katim Scherer-L's dream that this become the Elizabeth Blume Silverstein Community Center on that prominent place there. It has a way to go. The house hasn't been lived in 50 years, and it shows it. Okay. Born in 1892, like these other several of these other women, Blume was raised in Newark, lived with her family at 176 Broome Street in the old Jewish neighborhood of the Central Ward, and attended 18th Avenue Public School. After World War I, her parents bought a house at 62 Osborne Terrace, which she regarded as her main home for the rest of her life. Here's a picture of Linda Forgash on the front steps of that house. And you'll see, I think, up in the right corner that her shingle is there, Elizabeth Blume Silverstein, attorney at law or counselor at law. That sign is still on the house, though I think Clinton Hill's going to take it down temporarily because someone took it off. It was found, we put it back up, but I think it will be in safekeeping. Okay, yes, that's there. Okay, here's her son Nathan at her law library, because while she practiced law on Market Street, and I'll get to the address, at the latter part of her career, she brought her office to her house. To her right were bookshelves lined with law books, which struck her as a way to reinforce the idea that the law was always at Elizabeth's fingertips. No one could have been more generous with their time. This is Linda writing, than Nathan about his life with mother. This, to Linda, was a researcher's dream. Nathan explained who was in the photographs and the walls and also on the top of the second floor desk, some of which are included in this narrative. But let's start with Elizabeth as an 8th grade student who discovered that her youthful ambition to be a lawyer didn't sit well with her teacher. The teacher commented, "Well, I never thought that I would teach a girl who didn't know the difference between a man's work and a woman's." It repeats itself in multiple sources. Female students, according to this teacher, could either grow up to be teachers or nurses. Trying to appease her teacher, she revised what she had written about becoming a lawyer to that of Elizabeth Blume, nurse. Of course, she didn't mean it. Going forward, Blume attended and graduated from Newark's Barringer High School at the age of 16. I have to here interject. Barringer, you may know, was the 3rd oldest public high school in the country. And four justices of the Supreme Courts graduated or attended this school. 2 of them from the US Supreme Court and 2 of them from the New Jersey Supreme Court. So Judge Healy, William Brennan is certainly the one that we know, and his statue is on the Hall of Records. Who was the other justice? You'll never get, so I'll tell you. Charles Evans Hughes, governor of New York, secretary of state, candidate for president, associate justice of the US Supreme Court, and then chief justice in a different term of the US Supreme Court. He attended 1 year, I think, of Barringer High School. Who were the 2 New Jersey chief justices who attended? Vanderbilt, Arthur Vanderbilt, the founder of, not the founder, the person most responsible for the New Jersey Constitution of 1947, which established the modern court system in New Jersey, and his successor, Chief Justice Weintraub, also was a graduate. So that bit of information I don't think has ever been put together, and it's been compiled over a few years in funny circumstances, but it's true. Okay. Now, at Barringer High School, she read The Merchant of Venice. It was the character of Portia who cross-dressed as a lawyer to save the life of the character Antonio. It was she who, by arguing the consequences of demanding a pound of flesh, that turned the tables on Shylock. This left Elizabeth with a lasting impression of how a female lawyer could argue a case as if she were a man. And just like Portia, Elizabeth learned how to navigate her relationships in a male-dominated world. In the end, Elizabeth, like Portia, wound up on top. Blume was a woman who stood her ground. She was quoted as saying, "I read about Pitt, Cromwell, and Abraham Lincoln." So, if she said if she said Lincoln could educate himself, then why couldn't she? Okay, you saw this building of the, yeah, I can't see. Okay. The New Jersey Law School in 1911. She graduated at the top of her class. This was the second graduating class of New Jersey Law School. And let me say, New Jersey Law School was started as a trade school. It was a for-profit school, just as the business school. I believe the law school was started before the business school, but I may be wrong. Both of them eventually became part of the University of Newark and ultimately Rutgers. Still vivid in her memory was her account of having read a newspaper at, wait 1 second, okay. at the top of her class. Okay. After she graduated, she persevered until she got a clerkship and worked until she passed the bar in 1913. She graduated at age 18. She entered New Jersey Law School at 16 from Barringer High School, graduated at 18, was too young to take the bar exam because that you had to be 21 years old. And she took it the first month that she was 21 years old. Still vivid in her memory was her account of having read a newspaper ad placed by a lawyer who needed a clerk. And I thought I might be able to get the job because the fellow's father had been one of my teachers in Hebrew school. I read your ad, she said, to which he replied, I want a boy, not a girl. So I walked out and after a lot of work managed to get a clerkship in the office of another attorney. She became a counselor of law in 1917, where she focused primarily on criminal law. She tried 7 homicide cases by appointment of the court, had the distinction of being the first woman appointed to try such cases alone in the state of New Jersey and possibly in the United States, and was admitted to practice in the US Supreme Court in 1921. Hers was a meteoric rise in both the legal and greater Newark Jewish community. This is the Jewish Chronicle, a paper of record for the Jewish community at that time. Blume's activities were frequently featured on the paper's front page. One headline reads, Miss Elizabeth Blume, lawyer, helps uphold rights of Jews. And another reads, 60 selected to serve as judges in Jewish court. She was also listed in Newark's 1914 directory as Elizabeth Blume, lawyer, 196 Market Street and 176 Broome Street. At age 25, according to her son Nathan, Elizabeth existed solely on coffee for the duration of the trial of her defending the accused murderer, Orazio Ricotta. Ricotta had been identified in a lineup that took place in the murdered victim's hospital room, in what the police insisted was an open and shut murder case. Blume had something else in mind. Speaking to a reporter, she said, I feel sure the jury will ultimately return a verdict in the defendant's favor because the facts show he's not guilty of a crime. Before Ricotta took the stand, Blume introduced witnesses as to the good character of the defendant and also witnesses who worked with him on the day of the murder, and he gave no signs of stress or anxiety. Next, she scored a point when she called a medical expert to testify that he would not credit a statement made by a dying man with a bullet in his brain. The baker, Charles Venuto, had identified Ricotta as his assailant in the police lineup staged in the hospital room. Blume's medical expert was asked why Venuto's testimony and that of other physicians differed as to the actions of the brain. I'm going to pass this up. No, I don't know why that was in there. I didn't know how to take it out. He claimed that there was a reason for the discrepancy in the fact that he, Dr. Epstein, operated on live men, while other doctors, as illustrated by that image taken from a rare glass slide, were only in the habit of performing post-mortems. I summed up, she said, by telling the jury that because the dying man thought he would recover and didn't want to be shot again, he had to redeem himself with the gang to which he obviously belonged to by fingering an innocent man. The gang wasn't happy with him because he had been arrested before. But if he survived and got someone other than a gang member, in this case, Orazio, charged in the shooting, he might be able to regain his standing. Blume cast so much doubt on the identification, the jury returned an acquittal in 20 minutes. This was the case that catapulted Blume's career as a sought-after lawyer. Following his acquittal, Ricotta left the courtroom with his wife and 9 children in tow. Years later, Blume would admit to her family that she felt being assigned to what was perceived to be such an unwinnable case was an attempt to put this young lady in her place. Not surprisingly, the tactic backfired. After the Ricotta victory, Blume was frequently surrounded by a group of men where it was plain to see that they were eager to hear her every word. On one occasion, a stranger approached a courthouse attendant and asked who the woman was. "Why, that's Miss Blume, the lawyer." "The lawyer," was the reply. The interesting part of this is that early on, practically all of her clients were men. Asked if she thought the fact that she was a woman had anything to do with what success she had, "I do not," she replied. "I have to deliver the goods just the same, if not to a greater extent, than the men who are opposing me. I don't look for special consideration because of my sex, but I do look for gentlemanly treatment, and I generally get it. Anyway, no matter how others may feel about what they regard as my invasion of their business, I am in the game to stay. I mean to forge ahead in my profession, and if my brains don't land me where I want to go, I hope my persistency and belligerency will." A series of successful verdicts led Blume to opening an office at 196 Market Street in the heart of downtown Newark. This is where she sat and waited for her first client to call. Selecting Market Street was consistent with Elizabeth's understanding of how to attract clients. If you allowed for the number of Yiddish speakers and first-generation Jews living in Newark at this time, having her photograph on the cover of the Jewish American Family magazine might be a reason for her to believe that she had a built-in clientele. Actually, her reputation for defending the rights and privileges of her race was well known. It might also be that her ladylike qualities worked in her favor. Envision an attractive woman, meticulously dressed, soft-spoken, but with a firm and steady voice. It was Elizabeth's courtroom presence that was guaranteed to appeal to a male judge and jury. She exuded confidence when she said, "I always spoke in a loud, clear voice, even in the beginning when I knew my law, but I had no practical experience to speak of. With each case," she said, "I became more and more self-assured. I," she said, "became a good lawyer with practice." Her hats became her trademark. The custom of wearing a hat started early on. She was quoted as saying that in 1907, she had to tuck her long hair beneath her hat before walking into the New Jersey Law School to pick up an admissions application. In private life, she was the wife of New York attorney Max Silverstein. Their marriage was a partnership of mutual interests. They were married in 1934, and had one son. At this time, the reason she might have been the first a woman to hyphenate her name. She did it because she was afraid that the court or the bar association would view her as a different person and not entitle her to what she had earned. So she became Blume-Silverstein. It was Nathan who said her mother was not a homemaker. His mother was not a homemaker. Her specialty was noodle kugels. Blume understood the meaning of the phrase, "the law is a jealous mistress." Finding time to spend with family was not compatible with a successful practice, nor with spending time in the kitchen. And that sort of goes with what George was saying about the other women lawyers. One of her earliest cases involved a Catholic street cleaner who was seeking a divorce. She gave him a quote for her services up front, but her expenses unexpectedly rose when she realized that she needed to obtain a papal degree in order to finalize the divorce. Despite the added costs, Blume stuck to her quoted fee and never told the client of the expense. In another case, the defendant was charged with infidelity. Blume's defense was unusual at best. Apparently, her client couldn't read the love letters allegedly written to him by other women, so they could not be admitted as evidence in a divorce suit. She became so popular at one point that when an opposing attorney began asking jurors if they were acquainted with anyone in the upcoming trial, the judge chimed in, "Is there anyone here who doesn't know Miss Elizabeth Blume?" Not every case was successful. In 1921, Elizabeth felt she had lost what she had thought was a clear-cut case. The all-woman jury was swayed by an uncommonly handsome and well-dressed prosecutor. One of the jurors had been heard to remark that she was so taken by the prosecutor that she scarcely listened to the trial. Elizabeth appealed the case because she felt that she had truly won. An editorial of the day suggested, tongue-in-cheek, that men should be required to wear masks while pleading their case. Okay, a Star Ledger Sunday magazine story added a little more humor. Okay. Okay, what man? Okay, two interviews covered the questions, what man makes the best husband and what girl becomes the best wife? Blume answered for the women's point of view. Love, she declared, is a woman's whole existence. The man who gives a woman love is a man she wants. Being the wife of a doctor or professional man is the toughest, she said. Blume's own marriage to New York attorney Max Silverstein seemed to bear out their exceptional relationship, having similar interests in Jewish affairs. On Divorce Made Easier, Blume called Reno, Nevada's new divorce law a godsend for many unhappy couples. A wife brought suit for divorce against her preacher husband on grounds of his cruelty. Blume had her client testify that for 7 months he slept in the bathtub, put up with his wife's temper until she finally left him. She beat him about twice a month, swore at him in front of neighbors, and the neighbor, when asked to testify that the pastor struck his wife, refused to do so. Happily, the pastor got his divorce. Although she'd become very active in Jewish affairs, the Baptist Church trustees selected her to represent them in settling an argument between rival factions on the selection of a new pastor. In 1928, the Essex County Bar Association amended the membership clause in its constitution by only one word, but it was a blockbuster. It was the word male. Their intent was pointed and prejudicial, and Blume knew it. In response to the change, she launched a powerful attack using a volley of verse. Her poem, addressed to the Essex Bar Association, was published in the Newark Morning Ledger. The result, the Essex Bar amended its position, and the rest is history. As for making a living, Blume remarked, it doesn't sound well for a person to talk about how much money he or she is making. As far as the earnings of some lawyers go, I suppose my income is picayune, but I can say the results, considering the length of time I have been practicing, are far better than I expected to reach. Elizabeth's position on women and their ability to assume municipal office was as follows. It is a false idea to say that the women of America don't know what is going on. They do know. There are 150 to 175 women's clubs and fraternal organizations in Newark, and most of the women are not as ignorant as some would have you believe. It is, or should be, she said, a question of possessing proper qualifications before assuming any position. For many years, she was active in the Independent Order of B'rith Abraham and the only Jewish woman who had the honor to be elected as a delegate to the Republican National Convention in 1932. She was a suffragist and a member of the Women's Political Union, which sought equal rights for women to vote. She was also the first New Jersey woman to serve on a draft board during World War I as their legal advisor. Silverstein was a three-term Grand Master of the Independent Order of B'rith Abraham when it was the largest Jewish fraternal order in the world. Blume also had a seat on its board. Both she and Max attended the first meeting of the World Jewish Congress held in Basel, Switzerland in 1936. They were listed as representatives from Newark and Essex County. Both Max Silverstein, both Max Silverstein and the world-renowned Rabbi Stephen Wise were its co-founders. And here she is attending the Congress's meeting. Left to right are Elizabeth, her husband Max Silverstein, Rabbi Wise, and Nathan Strauss. It was the Congress's position in the world order for Jews everywhere that demanded that the United States Senate refuse any treaty failing to provide absolute equality, political liberty, and religious freedom to all men. Representative of the many honors Elizabeth received, this photo features Blume, who was elected as chairwoman and leader of a parade of 40,000 citizens protesting to the United States Senate against ratification of a treaty which discriminated against the rights of Polish Jews, and a second parade of 25,000 marchers described as Newark's Balfour Parade. In other words, when Blume was not handling cases, she was constantly busy representing Newark's Jews. At age 84, the headline, "She's Still Busy at Law," appeared in the New York Times. It was an opportunity for her to list her accomplishments, including the first woman in Essex County to practice law on the same basis as men, the first woman lawyer in New Jersey to represent a defendant in a murder case unassisted, the first of her sex to serve on the Essex County Draft Board, and the first woman in the state's old 12th congressional district to serve as a delegate to a national political convention. As far as women's lib is concerned, I set the example, but I practice, not just preach, the most of the feminist leaders today. Yes. Elizabeth Silverstein worked until her early 80s. In 50 years of practice, she is said to have handled more than 5,000 cases. Linda thinks that she would have been pleased to have her career described by the following. She knew the law, she kept her word, was highly respected, and was always a woman of dignity. She was truly a trailblazer and proved that glass ceilings are made to be shattered. After years of deteriorating health, she died of heart failure in 1991 at the age of 98. And I added, so this is the construction site as of yesterday in front of Rutgers Law School. This curved semicircle retaining wall faces Washington Street, and a similar one will face University avenue. So.
We have a microphone here if anybody wants to ask questions.
George, why don't you?
Hello, my name is Adia. I enjoy your presentation and I enjoy the food that we have there. So I really, my mom is a lawyer, so she works in family law and she she worked with immigration cases and other things. So I really enjoyed the presentation. So my question is like how you encourage women, like including including Black women and Latinas to be part of to become lawyers instead and show the like because showing the presentation to them might be helpful or to put it in law schools and schools might be helpful. So
I'll answer that. I'll answer that first. First of all, Rutgers Law School, as of this year, is 59% female. So generally, females have been encouraged. And Rutgers Law School is about 48% people of color. So I think the message is out, but we always want more people to feel the opportunity. And Rutgers Law School really stands for access and opportunity.
I don't have a question, but I've been an Osmonter for over 65 years. And my grandmother, Miss Silverstein Blume, was the best of friends. And I went to Blessed Sacrament Catholic School. And my first stop was to be going to Miss Bloomingdale's Silverstein's house because they had Christmas cards. And she go, Arnie, come on in. How many do you have? I said, Miss Blum, I have about 50 cents. I'll buy all 50 from you. Just give them to the neighbors.
That's great. That's great.
Any other questions?
Thank you both. These are fascinating. I'm part of the Neighborhood History Project at Clinton Hill Community Action. And one of the things that we're doing is digging into the lives of some of the leading citizens and pathfinders in our area. I wonder if George in particular could say a little bit, but also Rob, about sources that you have found particularly helpful in exploring the lives of these crucial people.
Yeah, well, I would say nowadays it's amazing how many newspapers have been digitized. And so you can find all kinds of information about people, but before you never would have been able to because newspapers weren't indexed. And another place, if you're interested in pursuing the lives of Newarkers, is to start right upstairs in the New Jersey History Room, where you've got several librarians here who are, very excellent in helping you use the resources that they have. New York City directories, newspapers, all kinds of professional directories. So they have a lot of really good sources here for doing Newark history. So that'd be my advice.
Yes, good evening, man. My name is Evelyn Williams, and I'm a member. I have lived in Clinton Hill for the last 55 years. And so we're very active and know the location. And I just like to say there are many women. Many of my friends are attorney, Judge Vivian King. They all came out of Rutgers. They were part of the student sit-in. Vicki Donaldson, all of them came back to teach here. I chose to do the other side of the law with juveniles and hoping to bring them back. But women have been pioneers and becoming lawyers, defender of justice, and just being involved, participating. Certainly about their marching on May Day and Labor Day. So those are events that we should be involved in, know about it, and live it. And so that's what, and of course, being part of civil rights movement. My shoes about wore out from marching, but I can't give up. So thank you very much for this moment in women's history. It is indeed a wonderful evening.
Well, thank you for your work. You know, it's interesting you would say that. I think, you know, several of the women lawyers that I was talking about worked for like the juvenile court system. Some of them worked for legal aid. So, you know, I think that, yeah, a lot of them felt, you know, that they wanted to give back, or that they themselves as women had experienced discrimination. And so they were maybe a little bit more sensitive to that than male lawyers.
Anything else? Then let's say thank you again to George and Rob for a splendid program. The next Newark History Society program will be on Tuesday, June 2nd. Gail Malmgreen, known to many of you, is going to talk about her work on the Newark Archives Project, another great source of information. And she's calling it the many faces of Newark, because she discovers so much about Newark. And it's really a report on her discoveries in archives all over the country. So Tuesday, June 2nd, we'll hope to see many of you then. They'll be here. Thank you. Yeah.